Hey, good evening, everyone. Kenny Mullins here with the American Blood Tracker Association. We got Dustin Williams. If it's a second, I'm going to share this to a few groups or pages. I should have done that already, but we were running our mouths about fishing. While I'm doing this, Dustin, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are?
Hey, Dustin Williams. I'm out of Perry, Florida. Um, Spent many years blood trailing years ago. Um, Back when before Kenny really started blood trailing, I trailed his deer for him with an old cur dog I had that a Catahoula leopard, and me and Kenny was always friends, and we sort of got into it. And Kenny took it and really run with it, and has really made something with it over the years, and never thought blood trailing would blow up like this. And other than that, now I own North Florida Livestock and Crop Protection here in Florida. I'm doing crops and carcasses, some things that's of testing of bullets, getting to see the actual damages of them and the effects of bullets on game.
Yep. And yeah, so you're heavily involved with optics, ammo.
Yes, sir. I'm very heavily involved in the thermal optics world. I actually work for Rick's Thermal Optics there. I do a lot of stuff with 1776 ammo out of Newberry, Florida, and with different guns and calibers. We get to do a lot of bullet testing for 1776. A lot of that low development we test, and a lot of the bullets we get to test before we put them in production on actual game animals. And on an average, we kill well over 100 deer a year and several hundred hogs. And last year in Florida, I killed 500 coyotes in Florida. So
Yep.
we do a lot of bullet testing.
That's right. And I had some experience this year with some bad ammo.
Yeah. Yes, you did.
Yeah, and learned my lesson about buying reloads from people. And you got me hooked up with 1776 and my 308, and it's working.
Good deal. Glad to hear it.
So, and I was pulling my hair out trying to figure out how in the world I missed one shot and then kill another one at 185 yards, then miss, then kill another one at 190 yards. I'm like, what the heck? And I call you, and he's like, you need to weigh that ammo.
Yeah. We weighed the ammo, and we found some differences there in powder charges for sure.
Oh, yeah. So, you talked a little bit about your tracking and old Mac.
Old Mac. Mac was 16 and a half years old when he finally passed away on November 30th of this past year.
How many deer do you think Mac found?
A lot. I know still the longest track we ever done was that one me and you done up in Georgia where we tracked the deer a little over 7 miles.
Yep. So, right after Randy Vick. And,
that's right.
And that was one of those situations where the guy had a thermal and he didn't realize. We kept saying, hey, we're on top of this deer. Yeah. And they gave up, and we jumped the deer right there at the field.
Yeah, right there at the field. And we watched a 160 class deer run across the field, and I don't know if that deer was ever recovered. We wouldn't turn a dog loose on him because he was going right down the side of Highway 84.
Yeah, that was just a few hundred yards in a straight line.
Yeah.
I mean, never wavered from paralleling that highway.
He sure didn't.
And so Brandy and I, we were talking about Mac the other day, and I remember one time I was hunting back here behind the mill, and I called you. You were working. You said, go get Mac.
When you thought you lost him?
Yeah, so I was trailing on lead, and I tripped. I fell in a hole, and when I fell, I let go of the lead, and Mac jumped the deer and took off and baited up in a cypress head, and I couldn't get him. I couldn't get him back. I didn't want to call Dustin. I did not want to make that phone call and tell him that I lost Mac. And I finally had to. It was like an hour and a half later. I called him. He said, he'll be right there. He'll come back. Just stay where you're at. And
sure enough,
it was a while.
Yeah.
He didn't want to leave that deer.
No, he didn't. He was pretty unique.
Oh yeah.
I remember he told us some lessons. The lesson about doubting your dog when that buck you killed behind the house. We had trailed forever and we had him on a lead, and then finally said, "Hey, I'm just going to turn him loose and let him do his thing." And he told us something then. I think that was when we really learned a lesson on trust your dog.
That's right.
And not yourself, because it goes back to one thing we used to say. Now, if you know where the deer went, you wouldn't have called me.
That's right.
So that dog would sure tell you, old Mac, he was the world's worst. If you ever doubted him and pulled him off where he was right, he was ornery. So he would backtrack you and take you to where the deer got up from.
Yep.
And then he would bring you back eventually to where the deer was. He was famous for that. So it did take me many times to learn, if he told you the deer went that way, just go behind him, because if you restarted him and doubted him, he would play dirty with you.
That deer that called you on out here, that was more blood than I ever seen on a blood trail in a deer live.
Oh yeah, the big deer.
Yeah, that big buck.
That big deer. Yeah, there was a lot of blood on that deer.
I mean, we knew for sure any minute we were going to walk up on that deer.
Sure did.
And I found out it was I think a year later.
Yep.
I was in Big Bend Outfitters, and Patrick showed me a picture of that deer. I was telling him about it and told him you came out and trailed it. He said, "What kind of broadhead did you shoot?" I said, "A Swacker." He said, "A green one?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Here's your buck." Showed me the picture of it. Killed it 3 days, I think it was.
3 days after we had tracked him right across the highway, where he crossed the highway at.
Yeah, full of infection, pus coming out the eye. I still have the picture. If I'd have thought, I'd have put it on here to share. Right. But yeah, he was a great dog, and he trailed all the way up until what, 15?
No. For me, but when I took him, I retired him when he was about 12.
Right, but I mean, as far as
for me. As he got older, the last year and a half, he got deaf and he couldn't hear, and luckily he'd know some good hand signals. Half blind, and his hips started giving out on him, so he wasn't real stable. But I would still take him for shoot a deer, and I know the deer was there. Sometimes I'd go get him just for his sake.
That's like you called me on one. He stopped on it. What?
He stopped on it 15 steps of the deer. The deer was right behind. The briars had got bad, and he just couldn't push through them. And
he was just old.
That was the last. Matter of fact, that was the last deer I tracked for anybody. You know, and that was it.
A lot of good memories with you and that dog.
Man, you ain't wrong. I told somebody, him and Trace, my boy, they growed up together, and me and him growed old together.
Yep.
So, old Mac will always be one of them dogs that's irreplaceable.
You think you're ever going to get back into it?
Man, I don't know. That's probably not.
You ain't got the time.
I don't have the time anymore, working with my job and my company, and then all my pro staff stuff, and then still somewhere in there I got to be a husband and a dad. So I
but they go along with you, so that's a benefit.
And that is a big benefit. It really is, because if they didn't, I didn't have a family that was so supportive, I sure couldn't do the things that I do.
So the reason I wanted to bring Dustin on, Dustin has many years of blood trailing experience before it was a big thing.
Right.
He's probably forgotten more than most people knows, but the other side that I really wanted to bring you on for is your knowledge with ballistics and optics. And, I feel like we need to educate the trackers to educate the hunters.
Right.
So we were talking before we went live, and, one of the hot topics is, your 6.5 Creedmoor, and not just 6.5, your 243s, your 223s, but 6.5 has became a hot topic the last few years.
I agree. The 6.5 thing it's one of them things. You got people that loves them, you got people that hates them. I feel like you probably do have more people. You track more deer with a 6.5 than you do any other caliber, strictly because there's so many people 6.5.
Right.
It's like a Rage broadhead. When they work great. But there's, so many more people shooting that particular broadhead or that particular caliber than any other. Me personally, I do shoot a 6.5 Creedmoor a lot, me and my wife. And, in the last, I don't know, 5 years, we've probably killed 250 deer with them. Besides, on our deer depredations. And, me and you've had many conversations about it, and you've got a lot of deer from me, and, have seen the results of it. But now I feel like shot placement and practice has a lot.
Now, Alex Hood just commented, I believe that shoot the wrong ammunition with the 6.5. So this is something, Alex, this is why we brought Dustin on board, because he is an expert in this field. So you want to touch on that?
Yeah. Out of my 6.5 Creed, I prefer, there's two bullets that I really prefer. Is a Barnes 127 LRX. It's an all copper bullet, and it pretty much does the same thing every time you shoot. And then also a Sierra 140 grain tip Game King. Those can be bought at 1776, and we before we put those in production, we've done a lot of extensive testing with those. I've shot lots and lots of deer with them, and one thing you always get with the biggest complaint you hear a lot with a 6.5, there's no blood.
Yeah.
Well, with that 140 Game King, I would say 98% of the deer that I shoot, or hogs, that bullet passes all the way through. Now, what I will say is a lot of times I don't necessarily look for a blood trail, because I hunt a lot of fields, and very rarely do I have a deer go over 30 yards. My wife has experienced a lot of the same thing, and I've shot deer from 50 yards to 600 yards with it, and it works great. I think a lot of big misconception with a 6.5 Creedmoor, and I hear this all the time. It's so fast that it doesn't have time to expand.
You and I have talked about that a lot.
So when I hear that statement, it baffles me that people thinks that a bullet that is going so fast it don't have time to expand. The faster the bullet is, the more violent the expansion of any caliber bullet. So I do believe there is bullet manufacturers, and I've tested pretty much every bullet manufacturer, the projectiles and the factory ammunition, and there is some that, when those bullets work, they work great, but they're just not consistent. So I do not shoot those. The most consistent bullets I have found is Barnes and Sierra. That is my choice. Nosler does also make a great bullet.
So Alex says he shoots the Sierra. He says, I shoot the Sierra. I just feel a lot of hunters shoot plinking ammo like Hornady Black and so on.
There's a lot to that. I do hunt all of my Predator stuff. A lot of my depredations when I'm shooting my 224 Valkyrie is shot with match grade bullets, but now I do hand load those. I shoot a lot of match bullets, and I think there's a misconception between match bullets and FMJs. Now, Full Metal Jacket, no, it's not going to expand, but where a match bullet, I feel like it's somewhere between a varmint bullet and a bonded hunting bullet, and it always expands. And me and you've looked at that, and you've looked at some of the deer I've shot with match bullets, and you can attest that it's usually a very gruesome sight.
Oh, for sure.
A good bonded bullet, a good hunting bullet, it gets in and gets out and leaves a blood trail. Where a match bullet, like a Sierra Match King, a Tip Match King, something a Burger VLD target, they a lot of times don't exit, but the internal damages and the hydrostatic shock of that bullet when it hits it's anchoring to a deer. So
I like to see more of that, because then they can't find any sign. They call the dog and we get easy trails.
Right.
I'll take some easy trails.
How many deer have we tracked in the past where there's no blood, there's nothing, and it just be something dense, and the deer's 30 yards over there through a palmetto patch or something? But
oh yeah,
there was no sign, or
especially in our area.
Right. Especially in pines or something where when you really look and you looking for blood and the hunter couldn't see it, and then when we get there we find a lot of blood. And I think one thing that a lot of hunters mess up looking for blood is they have an extremely bright light and it washes the blood out and you can't see it.
So that's something I want to talk about too, because I know you have a lot of experience with a lot of different types of lights. So.
Yeah. So the old just white, light, looking for a track going down a road. If you got a white light and shine down, you're shining straight down on that track. A lot of times you can't see it, but if you'll kneel down and shine that light down the road so it dims out, you look and you can see a track going right on down the road for a long ways.
Yep.
So I feel like the same applies with blood trailing. You can take and flood that light out and get something that's not so overbearing that it washes, your blood out.
But not like a high spot.
Right. Just something that shows it. I feel like you got a lot better chance of finding blood.
That's right. Well, Carrie Patterson has a question. She says, do you have any recommendations for a 300 blackout?
As far as ammo for a 300 blackout, are you shooting sub or hypersonic?
We'll give her a minute. She'll respond. My recommendation is don't shoot it, but
to each their own. And,
it's good for kids. I'll say that.
A 300 blackout is great for what it was designed for. That's to not penetrate walls when doing for law enforcement. Am I a fan of it? No. But, there's a lot of people that are. And to me, what's more important with a gun is you have a gun that you're comfortable with.
That's right.
I know I see a lot of times where people buys a gun and they never learn how to shoot that gun.
Yeah.
And they just pick up some ammo and say, okay, it's going to shoot. Well, as long as it hit a pie plate at 100 yards, well, we're good. And then biggest buck they ever shot at's 200 yards, and they have no idea where their bullets went. So
Carrie said, not suppressed. My son started shooting one, not shooting over 100 yards.
In the 300 blackout, I believe Barnes makes a bullet for those. And I'll be honest with you, that's a particular cartridge that I don't know who all makes factory ammo for it. I know we make some at 1776. We make some sub X 190s, and we do make some supersonic bullets also.
Yeah, so I'll get you to shoot me a link for her,
Okay.
and I'll forward it to
Absolutely.
her. So that'll be good. Now we got a question coming in from Joe Sellers, and this is always a hot topic. As a tracker, which caliber would be a recommendation, like 9mm, 357, or 40 cal? I personally, I prefer a 357 SIG. You familiar with them?
Yes, I'm familiar with them.
So the reason I like 357 SIG is like what you talked about earlier. You have a lower risk of pass through just by the design. It's basically a super hot 9mm.
That's right.
40 neck down to 9mm. Mm-hmm. And the reason I shoot that is so that the full energy remains in the deer, less risk of pass through hitting the dog or.
That's right, and that goes back to a lot of bullet choices. So
right.
Again, in my opinion, that's the gun you're comfortable with. As a sidearm for tracking, I would say whichever gun it is that you are most comfortable with, that you are most efficient with, because that is, in that situation, that is something I feel that you need to be extremely efficient with and comfortable with your gun, because not only, you're shooting around somebody, you're shooting around, a deer, you're shooting around your dog.
Right.
When I was tracking, and I believe you still do the same, no one was allowed to tote a gun but me around my dog.
That's right. And you and I did that way back before,
That's correct.
The days of all this Facebook stuff,
Right.
and it was I'm the only one carrying a gun. So Randy Vick said 357 SIG, and it's we've just we didn't do the research, someone else did, but
Right.
they shot, I believe it was a 40, and it went through and hit their dog. And so he did some research and came across 357 SIG, and what it was designed for was shooting into crowds of people and it
Right.
not passing through and hitting innocent bystanders, all that. So we just translated that over into the tracking world to minimize the risk of passing through and hitting a dog.
Right. And my personal sidearm was a 9mm, and when I was tracking, and most of the time my gun has a good self-defense bullet in it, so
Yep.
I never worried about that bullet passing through. It's a lot like my bullets that I run in my coyote guns is because I hunt a lot around livestock and stuff. So the bullets that I shoot, I shoot a bullet that don't pass through.
Right.
Just so I don't have to worry about a bullet passing through and then hitting something on the other side or ricochet and hitting livestock or something. So they make bullets for everything.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I know one of the new hot guns. It's not new, but that a lot of trackers starting to carry is that 22 mag, that PMR 30, I think it is.
Yeah, PMR 30, Kel-Tec.
Yeah,
it holds 33 rounds.
Yep. Yep. And I mean, you and I, we've killed a lot of game with the 22, and
That's
not
right.
illegally, but
no, not illegally.
I mean, I've shot hogs in the head with a 22, even 22 long rifle, and they just crumble right there.
I have. And then you'll shoot some that it don't do nothing. I was hunting about a month ago, maybe a little longer than a month. I was on a ranch, and a hog was coming down a dike to me. And they told me, hey, if you see any hogs, shoot them. I said, okay. So this big hog was coming down a dike. And I said, well, I'll just shoot him right here in between the eyes. Well, I shot him between the eyes with my suppressed pistol. And the bullet literally ricocheted off him and hit my truck. And then he just kept coming. So I shot him again. He went to go away. And I shot him again. And it was just like a pinball machine. He'd go away, I'd shoot him, he'd turn and come back. And before it was all said and done, I shot that hog, I don't know how many times, but 3 of the bullets ricocheted and hit my truck. Luckily, it didn't hurt anything. It was just you could hear it hitting the truck. So
that's why I don't shoot one. I got a scar. You can see it. I had to have surgery right there from a ricocheted bullet, 22 in my hand, and it stopped right at the bone. And that's why I'm not a big fan of using 22 or 22 mag to dispatch with.
Right.
Especially, I mean, when you go in and have surgery on your hand because of a ricocheted bullet, it changes your mind.
For sure.
And something a lot of people doesn't think about. Tommy says, are you shooting FMJ and 357 SIG? No, I shoot defense ammo. I wanted to expand and stay in that deer.
I think FMJs is where a lot of people mess up, especially with a pistol. Want to dispatch game because it's just poking holes unless you get a bullet that tumbles, and then it does do a little damage. But I mean that is a target bullet. That a lot of people misconcept that a bullet poking holes through an animal.
Yeah,
that's all it does.
Yep.
It's like shooting a deer with a field point.
Yep. Yeah, Alex Hood said 10 millimeter for him. I haven't found a 10 millimeter that fits my hand comfortable.
Right. That 10 millimeter is a cannon. Now, if you can tote it and shoot it right, it's most definitely getting the job done.
Oh yeah, Chuck Darby said he shoots hollow points out of a 40 Smith & Wesson. I do carry a 40 Smith & Wesson. That's my carry gun.
Right.
But I've shot deer with it. They definitely towed it a little more than they do that 357 SIG.
Right. Well, the 40 may have a bigger diameter, but you're gaining your energy there through the speed of that bullet.
Right.
So when it hits him, it's got that much more hydrostatic shock, and it's just liquefying there, putting a deer in shock,
That's right. And I've dispatched a lot of deer with knives. I'm not a big fan of that. It's just too risky. I've been knocked down. I've been I've been flipped. You name it, I've held on. I've been drugged by a deer. It's not fun. It's safer to dispatch it with a gun.
I agree, and me and you've had this conversation before. I think when you dispatch a deer with a knife, I can't knock that because I've been known to do it a lot.
I have too.
I think when the misconception of cutting a deer's throat is, you about got to cut his head off, it seems like, where if you will get right there beside the deer and take your knife and poke him right there through the heart and the bottom of the lungs.
Yep. Like a hog hunter.
Right. I'm bad. I want to stick my knife in there and jiggle my blade. And if I have the option to flip him and stick him on both sides, usually, it takes just a few seconds and he's dispatched then. So,
yeah, that's honestly, I've thought about, because I've been in some pretty bad situations grabbing deer, I've thought about getting a lightweight, like collapsible spear, even, for those times where you're not legally allowed to dispatch with it.
Right.
We're again, that's building a relationship with the game wardens. Is, around here we really don't have. Let me rephrase that. We didn't have any issues because we had relationships with all the game wardens. That's correct. Now we have all new ones.
That's right. So now those are all the relationships that has to be built again. That trust factor is and getting a new game warden to trust you it's not the easiest thing in the world.
No, and right now all of ours are young, newer in the game.
That's right.
So I don't even know if you've been around. We got some good ones. The women are great.
Right. I did have an encounter with some of the female FWC officers and during duck season.
Yeah.
They had me dead to rights. I was wrong. Jumped in my boat. Hadn't been in my boat in a long time. I didn't have my registration.
Ugh.
And told her the situation and told her, listen, I understand, and this is my fault. It's nobody's fault. My own. You got a job to do. You can't be mad at them for doing their job.
No.
And a lesson I did learn, because I know you duck hunt a lot.
Oh yeah.
So the federal duck stamp, you think that's an annual? It's good when you buy it once a year. It's good. I got educated. No, it's only good for 45 days.
Well,
and she said
on electronically.
No, period. When you look at it, it was, if you get down and read the fine print, she said, I'm not going to never write you a ticket for that because I done the same thing. Because she said, I love to duck hunt too because I was under the influence that it was an annual stamp. No, it's 45 days.
Huh. I never knew that.
I didn't either.
That goes back to reading your game laws.
Well, you've got to sort of look because it'll say the stamp is good for that year.
Yeah.
But for the duck hunting side of it, it was 45 days. And
wow.
I was,
wow.
Yeah. So I bought another stamp.
Yeah, we got hit a hot topic, 44 mag with hot load wad cutters. 40 hollow point, 357 mag hollow point. I have carried 357 mag, but most of them are just, by the time you get one with a big enough barrel to shoot at any distance, they're bulky and heavy. Right. And I do carry a full frame Glock 357 SIG, but it's still not as cumbersome as a wheel gun.
Tracking, I like my gun on my chest at that time, because I'm not there. There's too many times you could hit something and knock it off. I actually had I was going through a slough one time and had my gun get knocked off my side, and in thigh deep water, and then light locked. I never found it, but if it's on my chest, I feel like I've always, I know that's there then.
Yeah, now they make some great holsters
exactly.
right there for your chest. Sure. Alex Hood says, why can't I see all the comments? Alex, some of these, so we share this on multiple platforms, multiple pages, groups. So some of the comments may be on a different one than you're on. That's why you're not seeing them. Randy Vick said 125 grain jacketed hollow point 357 SIG. All right, so we had a question come in. Wrong one. Training a pup when she gets off track, how and when do I pull her off and reset, or what should I do? So I'd have to have a little more information on that. And the reason why is because, at what point is she getting off? How far are you letting her work? If you can, shoot me a message, and let's talk about that in more detail. Because a lot of times I'm going to let the dog try to work it out, and
that's very situational,
yeah,
dog to dog, and situation
yeah.
to situation.
I mean, really, if the dog's hunting and keeps hunting and is trying to work its way back, I'm going to let the dog hunt.
Right, let them fix their mistakes. But
right.
if the dog's goofing off, you need to roll the dog up and correct him.
Yeah, and I always, and you probably do this too. We've talked training for many years. I always bring the dog back to a point where it was already trailing, and you knew it was already on the line, and let it try to progress it forward. Right. So, Alex Hood says he sees 0. I guess we'll have to maybe next week do a how to Facebook live stream. Teach Alex.
I'm with him. I've seen some of the live streams before, and I couldn't see it had a bunch of comments and try to read them, and I couldn't find them either. So.
Nah, I got to razz on Alex a little bit. So here's a good question, and we talked about this, and this is something we were going to bring up, but a question came through. Do you ever utilize your thermal gear when looking for a blood trail when you do have to track an animal?
So I wish that, my thermals would show a blood trail, and you would think thermal, it will show a blood trail. Unfortunately, most of the time your blood gets to temperature where thermals don't pick it up. But where a thermal does really can be utilized in tracking is looking forward, or looking across big fields or something. You can look out there and say, hey, there's my deer. A lot of the same concepts of a thermal drone, which is big in recovery now. And, I know you used one to do some recovery.
Yep.
And I got to play with some thermal drones here recently, and I was amazed by them. I was actually doing some deer depredations, and a friend of mine brought a thermal drone. And he said, hey, let's do this. And, man, the efficiency it made for what I was doing. So instead of having to drive from field to field, we sat in one spot, and, we covered 3,000 acres of fields real fast. And we know where to go, where the deer was. So it made doing our job very easy. But, tracking a deer in the woods, if you have a low base mag thermal, something like a Rix Optics ST6, that's a handheld thermal that can also be helmet mounted. You can put that down. Look, it's a 1 power base mag, and you can really got a really good field of view looking ahead. You can see you can tell, hey man, that deer up there, he's got his head up. You're not spooking them with lights. If you got a deer down and he's still alive, you can take that thermal, and utilize it, especially in the dark, to get in there sort of quiet, and not booger a deer. If he's next to a property line or something, and go ahead and get that deer dispatched,
or back out and wait,
or back out. Exactly. You can back out. Deer gets up and runs off. You can really see, you can look and go, hey, he went right there, and if you're on your game, when you're walking up and you see him, you can hit record on your thermal, and then you can record it. So when the deer goes, the deer gets up and leaves, you can say, hey, he went right there, he went by that tree, and you have a definite point, where he went, where you need to. So yes, they can be very effective, replying there to William Hatton. You can be very effective with your thermals as long as they're used correctly. They're a very valuable tool in tracking.
So what would you recommend as a tracker if a tracker wanted to have some type of thermal? What would you recommend?
I would highly recommend a Rix Optics ST6. That's going to be a 640 by 512 resolution. That's a handheld thermal scanner that can also be mounted to a helmet. So depending on what the tracker likes, I prefer to use it as a hand scanner. Just put it on a lanyard. Mm-hmm. It's very small. It's about the size of a conventional rangefinder. Very small, very lightweight. Runs on 18650 batteries, and I like it for that because of the wide field of view and a 1 power base mag. Very good image. So, also if a deer gets up and he's leaving, you can tell, a lot of times what you can do is identify where the wound is, because you
Right.
can see the hot spot, you can see blood dripping off of them, so that's something that's valuable. It's just that one of those extra tools that you can utilize.
What does something like that run?
So that scanner there will run you $29.99. Comes with, and it does come with a 5-year warranty. I know it's a pricey investment, but as a tracker, we want every tool to make our job as efficient as it can be. And there is it something you're going to use on every track? No, until you own one, and you would think I'm never going to use that. But once you have one and learn how to use it, you would never you'd never do a track again without it.
Right. So, obviously you have a lot of knowledge with thermal. Have you used any thermal drones yet?
I've not used none for deer recovery. I have used some for some of my business stuff with the deer depredations. I will be getting one. Yes, I wish I'd never seen it.
Let me ask you this: do you ever see it replacing a dog?
No. Where I see to optimize yourself as a tracker, if you have a thermal drone and you have a dog and you learn how to marry those together, I believe that's where you come full circle as a tracker.
Right.
One, if you do jump a deer, you can put in your drone is already in the air. It saves your reset time down, and you can see that deer. You can go, hey, this deer's going, he's not slowing down. He's done went a mile. Then you can go to making calls, or you can go, hey, this deer didn't get up and go but 50 yards and he's laid back down. Let's back out. We got him marked right here. So then you're not having to track yourself back in there. To me, it utilizes, it makes the tracking team that much more efficient. A lot of people ask me in the coyote hunting world, what's better, a trapper or a coyote caller? I call coyotes, but if you got a good trapper and you got a good coyote hunter and they work together, you can really, really hurt the population in a hurry.
And see, that's something I wanted to talk about, because right now the two sides are fighting, and I'll tell you what's happened. And the drone guys have made some inaccurate accusations towards the dog guys as a way to promote themselves. Well, the drone's not going to spook the game off the property. It's not going to be putting down the scent of the dogs and running off game and all that. Well, as many years tracking, how many times you tracked a deer and they'd be right back on camera the next day, or while you're tracking, you track right past a live deer, the dogs don't pay any attention.
Oh, I mean a lot.
So
a lot.
What's happened is these drone guys are attacking dog guys in a way to promote themselves, and sell themselves as superior.
And unfortunately, in that side, that's just like, in our area, you got, or across, bow hunters and rifle hunters.
Yeah.
Or
dog hunters and still hunters.
Exactly. Why can't we all get along and realize we can all help each other?
Right. So that's why I wanted to kind of talk about that, because there is a benefit to both. Now, where we're at, most of the time you're probably going to benefit from a dog more than you are.
Absolutely. Our canopy's so thick. We don't lose our leaves. It's thick all the time.
Right.
Where is it beneficial? Old cutdowns.
Yep.
If you're in South Florida or Central Florida on some of the big cattle ranches hunting, man, where you're looking at great big expanses of smut grass pastures and just prairies, man, you can put that drone in the air and really find a deer in a hurry. But if we was working as a team and you said, hey, Dustin, I'm going to go start this dog on this track, put the drone in the air. So I put the drone in the air, and I get there, and that deer may have turned and went through a hammock or something, that the drone's not effective. So at that point in time, I may run over that hammock looking, but I can't see nothing. Maybe trying to give you some information, but I may run up there and look right outside of a pond and say, "Hey, Kenny, you know, the deer's laying here," and steer you right to them.
Yeah.
And I don't see why we can't work together on that. And you know, it's sad that in every industry comes to that everybody has the best way instead of, hey, can see the benefit of both sides. So
that's right. And that's where I'm at. I think I don't think the technology, the thermal technology of the drones will ever completely surpass a dog.
No.
It'll never happen.
No, I mean,
because of terrain challenges and environmental challenges. And
100%. Can a drone be faster? 100%. Can it be faster? Yes.
And sometimes a dog can be faster.
Right. But is a drone faster? Yeah. Do I feel like every deer recovered with a drone could most likely be recovered with a good dog?
Right.
Do I feel like every deer recovered with a dog could be recovered with a drone? Absolutely not.
Right.
You know, you think about the tracks that we've done up in the bay or somewhere, and tracked a deer through a tie swamp where we was on our hands and knees, and you know, you get in there and you got to cut your way in and cut your way out.
And get cut on your way in and your way out.
Yeah. I mean, so you think about those tracks. You know, as a thermal hunter, you know, I mean, my whole life revolves around the thermal industry. My everyday job is in the thermal industry. My business relies on the thermal industry.
Right.
But if something's blocking a heat signature, it don't matter. It don't matter how good your thermal is or how good. If something's blocking it, and all it takes is one little clump of grass,
yep,
you can't see it.
Yep.
So that's where a good dog's going to smell it.
That's right.
So, yes, I don't think a drone can replace a good dog.
No. Yeah, and actually so right now there's a big battle in Pennsylvania. I don't know if you've seen it.
No.
Drone guy got in trouble. He's in quite a bit of trouble. Well, they're trying to get it pushed through legislation to allow drones. And of course, the dog people are up in arms because, you know, these attacks at drones or accusations that certain drone people are making towards dogs that are inaccurate. But we really, and I keep telling everyone, I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight. I don't want to nitpick and put down anything. We need to find a way to work together, come to common ground, because there's a place for both.
100%.
You know,
100%.
And that's the thing. You know, we need to stop the fighting, stop this, and you know, and work together. Like you said, there's a place for both. I think the majority of the time the dog is going to be superior. But there are situations, and especially certain parts of the country, where a drone is going to be more beneficial.
Oh yeah, I mean,
but like the drone guy that came out here, you know, like he said, one thing that he runs into is that the dogs have an advantage. Is the hunter says, "Oh, the deer went this way." Well, guess what? The drone goes and he goes that way. He searches all that area, couldn't come up with anything. Well, the dog would say, "No, your deer didn't go that way. It went that way."
How many times have we had people argue and said, "No, your dog was going wrong. The deer went this way." And you know, we asked me, "You sure?" The dog's saying, "The dog's wrong." You go, "Well, we're going to follow the dog. You stay behind us." And the deer has went that way.
Yep.
You know, as hunters, we both know how fast things can get misconstrued in especially a low light situation. You
right.
know, where you're not really, you think you know, but you don't know. But you know, I mean, I was always had the tendency to be fairly blunt with a hunter of, well, if you know where your deer went, you wouldn't have called me. Let's listen to the dog.
And then they get mad at you, and I'm going to call another tracker. And then you're already on, hey, you're probably about to get a phone call.
Yeah. You know, I mean, how many times have we used to get the calls of, man, I shot him with my rifle. He mule kicked 40 yards. He can't be far. And, you know, Mac was he was pretty good about when he would smell the hunter when we pulled up somewhere, and he would just go straight to where
Yep.
you know the hunter went. He'd track the hunter back and go, and he would, you know, if he ever went 2 or 3 different ways and come back and looked at me,
you know,
the deer wasn't dead, and you know, you would get a hunter saying, there's no way I missed, your dog's wrong, and this and that, and you know, then the hunter would call you and tell you that I was there, and you'd be like, well, if Mac said the deer's live, I'm not coming to waste my time. And then how many times we got that call 2 weeks later when the hunter comes back, man, I'm sorry, the deer's back.
Yeah.
So,
or they just don't call, and you find out the next time you went track for them.
Exactly.
Mike, he says, I've seen when thermal predator hunting, certain terrain gives off a lot of heat, making everything come together, pine trees, roads, and other things.
That there's a lot of truth to that, and that's where experience comes into play a lot, and especially in the South where we have the humidity, it makes thermal conditions just terrible. And when it's hot, things don't like to cool down really well, and you know, your trees are holding heat, your bushes. That's when experience on a thermal really comes into play to know what you are looking at, and sometimes you can play with the settings in your thermal to adjust some of that stuff.
Right.
But that's a very valid point what he is saying there.
So William Hatton has a question for you, Dustin. Says, have you seen and I know this is off topic from blood trailing, but you know, we want to also educate the hunting community.
Right.
Have you seen an increase in deer population in your area from your predator program, and how do you manage those numbers, if so, to balance each other out?
I've seen a huge increase in the deer population over the last several years. I've seen the deer population sometimes, I feel like, almost triple. You know, there's we hear a lot here that, and especially in certain areas of our part of Florida, where it's, well, FWC they've messed us up again. That's why we're seeing so many deer dead on the highway, is because of we can only shoot 5 deer now. Well, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, how many people ever killed more than those 5 deer?
Me and you.
There's quite a few
but
that did, but you know, for the most part, that I feel like because I get to do a lot of deer studies and just watching and looking and watching the deer population, there's a lot that goes on in the dark that people don't know. I mean, you know, in the last 5 years, North Florida Livestock Crop Protection has been responsible for over 2,000 coyotes dead.
Yep.
Now, that's played a big part in the deer population.
Deer, turkey,
the skunks. I mean, I used to hardly ever see a skunk. I pulled into a field last year. There's 28 skunks in one field.
Golly.
Rabbits, you know, we see several hundred rabbits, you know, a night, and we have our farmers tell us all the time, you know, it's amazing. Usually after I've been on a farm a year and in that area, they tell us that, hey, we're really starting to see an increase in the small game, the rabbits, the quail, the deer. I have some places up in North, up around Madison County. You know, everybody thinks Madison County, Florida, is just absolutely full of deer, and in places it is. But there was places that, you know, farmers plant peanuts and peas. You'd never ever see a deer when I first got to those places, but every field you went by had coyotes in it. So now you don't hardly ever see any coyotes in it. Now you're starting to see in that area, you go ride by a field and there'll be 15 or 20 deer in it. And the farmer's like, man, I've never seen deer like that in my life here. Yeah. Their turkey population, they're small game, and they like to see that, you know.
How big of a problem do you think? And I know this is just going to be our area, and every other area is going to be different. But I always hear, we got to go right now. You know, the coyotes are so bad. We got to get the deer right now.
I don't think, you know, in places that's an issue, but in places it's not. I mean,
what would you say the majority is an issue or is not?
I would say it's not. Now, I have seen in some places, I know you have too, where a place that does have a high coyote population,
predominantly cow fields,
right, or places you can't get to hunt.
Mm-hmm.
The coyotes are there, and a lot of that is coyotes that has been, I feel like, trained through the years. They know what a gunshot is.
Yeah.
So that immediately triggers them to start hunting, and they know the benefits of it. That's an easy meal.
Yeah.
So, contrary to a lot of people thinks, a coyote's far from a dumb dog.
Yeah.
That rascal is as smart as, I don't know if there's anything smarter walking. And to be able to study them like I have, I've been blessed to do that. But you learn they are an extremely intriguing animal. How they operate, it's pretty cool to watch how they actually operate, and everybody's got a job.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of people thinks, you hear coyotes howling, me and you've had these conversations. Man, there must have been 10 or 15 coyotes there.
Oh yeah.
There's 2 most of the time.
Yeah.
And people argue with me. That's, man, listen, I've been around dogs. I know.
Well, you came out here when it sounded like there was 100 of them, and that night you shoot 2 or 3, and we don't see them again for another year.
And one of the benefits is I had the video to show you.
Right.
Here it is. Here's them howling, and this is, and that's usually pretty humbling to people.
So here's a good one. So I know, especially in Madison County, you're right up beside a management area.
Oh man.
And so Mike is saying it's an issue in WMAs where coyote hunting isn't done.
I will agree with that. Those coyotes know they're safe there.
Yeah.
I mean, and
I know you hunt right across the road,
right across the dirt road, and that particular WMA, I would say that is probably the highest density of deer in the whole state.
Yeah, we don't even talk about which one it is.
No,
I'm just joking.
I mean,
it is.
I showed you the video of one field I pulled into right after dark last year. When there was crops in the ground, there was 192 deer in that field alone, and they just kept pouring out.
And I track a lot of deer in there.
And it's so the coyote population in those areas, they're there.
Yep. And even then, I mean, because that's a pretty heavily populated area with coyotes in that right. WMA.
I mean, right on the edge of that WMA, I probably kill 100 coyotes a year right there.
And even then, I've left a lot of deer lay overnight, and then they don't get touched. You know?
And there's a lot to that. Some coyotes just don't have that taste.
Right.
You got some coyotes they have that taste for livestock, or they have that taste for deer, and then some coyotes they're perfectly fine with chasing rats and bugs and rabbits. So,
and one thing that we talk about is our success rate has increased over the years as we, especially here in the South, because we're a lot of off-lead trackers.
Right.
We started utilizing proper wait times. Well, one of the things we found is if you wait the proper time, most of the time, especially like a gut shot, you're going to find that deer within 300 yards. Well, you go in early and you push it, and you just left that wounded scent trail. You just pushed it across. Well, now the odds of a coyote coming across that trail has significantly increased.
100%.
And most of the time, those are the ones that they're going to get to. Because you just strung that scent all the way across.
I do agree with that.
And not just us, but hunters not
general.
waiting to go look for it, and they start grid searching and just,
I mean, how many times does a deer get up and nobody never knows the deer's got up?
Right.
And, I guess me and you had to learn that lesson the hard way years ago.
Oh, yeah.
With deer.
We didn't have this. We didn't have people sharing this information.
No, it was learn as you go deal, learn from our mistakes, and you hear a lot of times, I can't let the deer lay, he's going to spoil. Well, I mean, obviously his body temperature has to drop and then rise again before the meat spoils.
Yeah, and the deer's on average 101, 102 degrees.
Right. So, you still got to give the deer time to die.
Yeah.
And, like you said, gut shot deer, regardless of what he's shot with, if you ever bust a guts, he's going to die.
Yep.
I mean, does it take longer for some? Absolutely. But if you just listen and wait those 6 to 8 hours and even up to 12 hours, if I know a deer's right on the edge of somewhere I can't go, or he's right on the edge of a river and I've made a bad shot, I'm probably going to wait 12 hours.
Yeah. And up north, it's going to be longer because it's colder. It takes longer for.
Exactly.
So, Randy Vick, he was touching on the drone thing. He said, we're lucky around my area to have an honest and reliable drone pilot. This year we tried to work together, and he found 2 deer behind me, and I found 1 behind him. We have to work together. And
that's touches right back to what we was talking about earlier. I mean, it just work together. I mean, because there's definitely the pluses of both. Both has their pros, and
right.
I mean, obviously both has their cons. Some, but it's the good thing about a drone is you can fly a drone over a property line.
Yeah, and that's a sore subject for
a lot.
Not just for us with dogs that are limited to the property, but also it's kind of violating some rights of people and privacy, and that's something. Right. If people does want to combat drones, and I'm personally, I think it's a good resource, but that's the way to combat it.
Right.
It's property lines.
And like the state of Indiana, for example, I have a friend up there. He's got a thermal drone, so you can't really use a drone for recovery in Indiana. If you fly a drone over your property, you can't hunt it for 30 days.
Wow.
So not many people's doing drone recovery.
Right.
And a lot of people don't realize with a drone, that thing has a number in it. And every drone can be tracked.
Right.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
So for the ones that think they can get a drone and do some shady things with them, somebody goes thinking something, they can track that drone and know everywhere your drone's been.
Oh, yeah. So William Hatton says, what's your most memorable tracking story? I can think of a few.
So probably one of the ones that always stuck out to me, it was everything sort of went wrong. I got called up to Shady Grove up there and to track a deer a lady had shot with a muzzleloader. Well, they had found a little bit of blood, and they'd looked, but they backed out, and me and Mac went up there, and the track just started off in a bad spot. It started right in a more or less a plowed field that had a little bit of growth in it, and we tracked deer about 300 yards across there, and then it went through some pines, and the deer went into a big cypress pond, and Mac kept circling the pond. I said, steer's here somewhere. Well, I have my muzzleloader with me. Well, we get worked around and following Mac. He kept looking for the end. He checked the pond 2 or 3 times for the deer to come out, and he kept going back to a certain spot. Well, me and the hunter was there, and we probably tracked deer 1.5 miles. Well, when the deer jumps up, and the deer likes to run us over, and right before that, we realized he had left his muzzleloader and the truck, and I had mine. My gun had got opened, and my primer had fell out. Well, we had went through a water hole, and what I had was wet, and so we didn't have a primer. Deer runs 2 foot from us, and he runs another mile, and Mac stayed with him, and we ended up being 2.92 miles. And before we caught back up with the deer and was able to get him dispatched, there was a lot of chaos run in and out of that.
And so to kind of shed light on that, we're pretty fortunate where we live at. There's a lot of hunting land. People doesn't realize how Florida is.
Right.
We got one landowner that owns 560,000 acres in our county.
That's correct.
Or in our surrounding area. and we got what 750,000 acres of public land.
Yeah, we got.
So when we talk about tracking, 2, 3, 4 miles,
That's right.
We have permission to do that.
Yes, that is correct.
And most of us, we know all the hunt club presidents. I've got a relationship with the timber company themselves.
That's right.
So don't think we're in a unique situation. Even though we're in Florida, you may not realize, that Florida has the amount of land it does, but we're in a unique situation here. And that's how I'm able to track, a couple hundred tracks a year.
Right.
I try not to as much anymore. But most memorable, man, I got so many. I think I remember every track I've been on.
One that I tracked for a hunter one time. Actually, you referred the track to me. Was not too far from your house.
Oh, yeah.
we had pulled into a place, and the guy says, "Hey, man, I shot a buck." I said, "Okay." So we get there and we pull up to where he had shot the deer, and he was sitting in a lawn chair in the road. And he said, "Man, I got so many bucks here." And he was telling me this going in there. And
he does still.
Yeah, he still does. Yeah. And we pulled around the curve, and they was 2 good rack bucks standing in the road. And he says, "I don't have my gun. What do I do?" And I said, "Well, my gun's laying right there." So he gets out and shoots at the deer. And I said, "All right." He said, "Which one you want to do?" And the deer runs off. And I said, "Well, you just shot that one right there." And so both deer went the same place. So I got out and I put Mac on them, and I was ahead of them, and Mac got ahead of me, just went out of sight and got to the edge of a pond, and the deer jumped up and runs Mac over, coming back by him, and somehow I played quick draw when the deer come by me, and I shot him 3 times with my pistol. And at the time, it happened so fast, and I'll never forget the hunter's dad was behind us, and he jumped up, and he's hooting and hollering, and that was the coolest thing I ever seen. I mean, it was comical. And it was the buck that the hunter had shot at with one of my guns, but he actually didn't even hit the deer. So then I felt real bad because the deer runs us over, but he was good with it.
So probably one of my most memorable. I got called to track a deer for a guy that is now a pretty good friend of mine, Jim Gast.
Yes, the legend.
Oh yeah, the legendary Jim Gast. So he calls me, and my rubber boots were soaked. My snake boots were soaked. So I told him, I was like, "Hey man, I'll be there. I got to run Tractor Supply, get some boots." So I run up Tractor Supply, get some rubber boots. I go down there. He's not sure where the deer's hit. I have 2 left boots. Somehow I walked out of Tractor Supply with 2 left boots. I'll never forget that. And we're trailing. I had Buddy, Bloodhound, on lead. And I heard something hit the creek behind him, which is basically extension off the Steinhatchee River. It's basically a river.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Man, your deer just got up and hit that water." No, there's no way this deer's dead. I said, "I don't know, man." We get over there, trailing. Sure enough, dog trails right to the river. My feet are hurting bad as I'm trying to walk in 2 left boots. We swim across this creek, get to the other side, and here comes the deer running by us. Buddy snatches the lead out of my hand.
Oh, Buddy.
And Buddy was he was a little different bloodhound. He ended up catching that deer.
Yeah.
And Jim and his buddy jumped on top and dispatched. But I'll never forget that one. For one, because I got to meet a legend that day, and
That's
we
right.
became good friends. And 2, I think I still have those 2 left boots.
So,
but there's a bunch. I mean, the one we went behind Randy. I mean,
oh yeah,
that was total. I think it was 8.5 miles.
Yeah, and
between what Randy did and what we did.
Right. It was.
That was a memorable one.
Yeah, that one will always be the longest one. I never cared to break that one.
Whew.
You know,
We were wore out, and we drove what?
It was 2 hours we drove just to get to it, and that was back when we didn't hardly ever travel much more than an hour.
Right.
Whenever you called me that night, it was like, "Hey, you want to go up here?" I was like, well, okay.
Yeah.
So then, I guess one more memorable one I'll always have. My oldest boy had shot a deer, and this is years ago now. He had shot a deer, and we was tracking him. And what was your dog that you had that went to Texas? Your male
Sam.
dog? Sam. So I had Sam and Mac. I'd stopped by and got Kenny's Sam dog and took Mac. Mac was already up in the years, and this deer had the potential to go a little ways. So the deer had made a jog, and Sam spun off through a pine row, and about 30 yards he was coming back to get on track and jumped a doe in the yearling. And my oldest boy Logan was behind us, and he was just standing there looking, and he turned and looked one way, and that big doe come out there and hit him like a linebacker and just flattened him. And I will never forget the look on his face. And obviously once I realized he was okay and just the pure shock of his face, I could do me some laughing about that one.
Yeah.
Because he looked one way, and next thing he looked, that big dog, she just flattened him.
I sure miss Sam.
Yes, sir.
Dakota Stewart said, what breed was Mac?
Mac was a Catahoula leopard.
Yep. And a good one.
Yes, sir.
He's the reason why I got 3 right now. But they'll never be what Mac was. I can tell you that. Mac was special.
He was special, and I remember when we first started tracking with him. Mac was one of those dogs that we didn't really train him to be a blood dog. He picked it up. He realized what I wanted him to do, and he done it, and he done it well. But I won't never forget, man. You was tracking one of your deer when you used to be famous for gut shooting a deer with a bow. So
they die.
They died. We just, we was training for. I don't know what we was training for to drag them that far, but
yeah. This workout.
Remember I used to get so aggravated with Mac because when he was tracking, he just always like his lollygagging. He never had his nose to the ground, and so it was hard to always trust him at times because, back then I was used to being from a deer dog man. I was used to a dog with his nose in the dirt hunting, and Mac just looked like he was just lollygagging, wandering around aimlessly. And
right.
Then we learned that aimless wander was just trust him.
Oh yeah.
So that's when we had to start learning to be a dog handler and trust your dog. And still today, I feel like that's probably one of the biggest downfalls to a dog. It's not the dog, it's the handler.
Oh yeah.
Because the handler doesn't trust the dog.
That's right. Yeah, and many, many times I've doubted my dogs, and I've had some good dogs over the years. I've been very fortunate, very fortunate lucky.
To have some good dogs.
And honestly, a lot of that comes from choosing from the proper lines. In fact, the reason I got Sam and Zena was you.
Right.
We were talking about, I said, man, Buddy just can't handle the amount of tracks I'm going on the bloodhound.
And we was talking about, a dog that could handle the heat and stamina.
And you said, you've been watching that dog, Chief?
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yep.
Josh Kelsey.
Yep.
You said, man, you said, if I was to get another dog, I'd get one of them Ladner Curs.
I sure did. And probably, if I was to ever get back into it, I would, I'd probably still end up with a Catahoula just because.
Oh, yeah, because I'm Mac. Right.
My lab, Valkyrie, she's my duck dog, but she likes a deer. Now, she will find a deer, but it's not something that I would, if nobody else was available, I know she would find one because she's done a lot of depredations with me and all, and I've laid some tracks for her, but
oh yeah,
that's and then I have the dog off of her. She likes the deer as good as anything I've ever seen, but I've not worked with her none because she's bird dog.
Well, that's like outlaw can trail.
Right.
No other dog I got. That sucker can trail. John will put out lines. and put out deer legs at the end or piece of hide or whatever, and letting them age. And if you don't watch, outlaw's loose. He's going to go and he's going to run those trails and he's going to bring it all back to you and put it in a pile.
So when I was working with Valkyrie, so I'm at the house laying tracks, and I'd go lay a track for her. Well, Mac, being old and ornery, the older he got, he was the epitome of old man. He done what he wanted, in and out of the house, and barked, and he just done what he wanted. And he had earned that right.
That's
but
right.
He would see me lay a track, and he'd walk over there while I was trying to work a dog or something, and he'd walk over there and get the deer leg or do whatever, and he'd get it and leave with it. It's like, I know where this is going, so.
Oh yeah.
He knowed that game.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You and I both, we've been around a lot of breeds. I mean, you're a houndsman from way back. Deer hounds, bird dogs, tracking dogs. And you've seen a lot of different breeds. I've worked with a lot of different breeds. And even within breeds and certain lines, there's dogs that'll excel over others. And
absolutely.
One thing, and I know you've been this way through the deer dog world too. You got to be able to make a difficult decision to let one go that's not up to par.
Oh yeah.
And if you want to, and I know that it can sound bad in some ways, but if you want to be the top,
that's right.
You have to make those decisions at times.
A dog has to have the characteristics and the things that you desire as a handler. But also in that you have to be a good enough handler to identify those desires and to get those characteristics out of that dog, or to identify those characteristics.
Right.
And then you have to have the ability to get those out of that dog. It's just like a man coaching football. Your team's only as good as your coach.
Right.
So, knowing how to get those things out of your dog is paramount. But if the dog don't have it, he just don't have it. The dog that didn't make me happy, you might be ecstatic with him because I'm looking for something different.
Yep.
Or vice versa.
It's like me. Someone called me today, said, "How do I choose a puppy?" Well, he was wanting me to train a deer hound, a trail dog, and want to know if we could do it the way that we do these tracking dogs. Right. I said, "Oh yeah, I can." He says, "Okay, so I got a litter right now. What do you like?" I said, "Give me the wildest one in your pack or in your litter." He said, "Really? You don't want one that has its nose to the ground all the time?" I said, "No." I said, "I want that high energy." He asked why. I said, "Well, I can harness that and channel that into what I want it to be."
That's right.
Trying to pull that out of a dog is a whole lot harder than to harness it.
That's correct.
Where someone else, they want that laid back, chill dog. Mm-hmm. I want one that's ranked.
That's right.
That's my preference. So just because I want that doesn't mean it's right for someone else. But again, it's my tracking style, my training style. I mean, I'll train one that's laid back, but overall, I want one with a lot of go.
That's right.
And putting it into the football analogy, look at how many good players there are out there. There's a lot of good football players in the high school and the college realm, and a lot of great coaches that they're under, but not all of them make it.
That's right.
So same thing with dogs, and even you may have a litter with the two best tracking dogs and then that's ever walked the earth, but they're not all going to produce that level.
That's correct. That's correct. I mean, I've had deer dogs. I've had some male dogs that, they was just good dogs, decent dogs, but they come from a very good bloodline, but they throwed really good pups.
Right.
So they was really good sires or gyps in the same way.
Yeah, John and I have a male cur that does not hunt to what our standards are or what we would like. But he throws really good pups.
Right.
So we're not getting rid of him because we know what he's producing.
That's right.
So that's one thing I want to So, what is that line produced?
What does that line produce? But again, that goes back to a lot of also because
I gotta get on this dog real quick.
Okay.
You go ahead.
But because of that handler couldn't get that dog to do that job, doesn't mean that you can or I can't. You might have a different approach to get to get that out of that dog. So do you want a dog from good lineage? Yeah.
It makes a difference.
I mean, I agree. You want a dog from good lineage, but also, I've seen some very, very good dogs that was picked up as strays.
Oh yeah.
Remember the house dog, that somebody here local had.
That was a good dog.
He was a good found him as a stray.
Yep.
In
the parking lot, wasn't it?
At the old Buckeye Park,
Yep.
Found him right there. I mean, and man, he was a good dog.
Yep.
And he was mixed up with he was a stray. You don't know what he was, but he was a good dog. So.
Yeah. So we got a couple of questions came in off this topic. So, William, I'm going to come back to yours, and I want to touch on Vicky's. Let's go tracking. You can always tone a dog down. If a dog does not have the drive, it's hard to create, and that's why I like a wild dog.
And I'll agree with that.
So one of my Catahoulas came from Lyle Avis, and when I went up there to get Dre, the male, there was a red leopard female there, pup, and I told Lyle, I said, "How can I get that dog?" And he said, "Well, someone's already put a deposit down." I said, "Well, I want that dog." And I seen that she was going to have it. And I said, "Well, if they don't come through, call me." And he said, "All right." So it was a week later. We were actually in Mexico on a cruise. And he sent me a message, said, "If you want her, she's yours." I said, "Well, I'm in Mexico, but I'll send you the money. I'll Venmo whatever I got to do. I want her."
Right.
And she's, out of the three that I've gotten, she's the one that's really got it. At a young age. Right. I mean, you remember how Xena was.
Right. She's right off the rip. Just
she's right there with Xena.
She got it.
Right.
Everything, and it's always nice when you get a dog that they just got it. They understand right off the rip what you want from them, and they just make life easy.
Yep.
For instance, Valkyrie, my lab, when I was training her to be a duck dog, I'd never trained a duck dog.
Yep.
But she picked everything up. She understood everything I wanted her to do, and she made it easy on me. She spoiled me for training a duck dog, and by far am I a duck dog trainer. But it's just nice when you got a dog, they just understand what you want them to do.
Yep, that's right. So William has a question. He said, "Is there one breed y'all would absolutely stay away from, or is it a feeling or nature about a dog over breed?"
Man, there's so many breeds that makes a good dog. I mean, one of the ones that was always shocking to me and is still, Camo is just amazing. I mean, how many wiener dogs you got now?
Let's see, 1, 2, 5. I had to think about it for a minute.
When you think about it, most breeds of dogs was bred for some kind of hunting. So, right. Do I feel like there's some dogs that probably has a better nose than others or different characteristics? So, William, to answer your question, I'm not going to say there's any breed that I would say just stay away from. It goes back to really, how do you want that dog? What do you want that dog to do? Do you want him just to find a deer? I mean, I've seen people with standard poodles.
Oh yeah, I've trained standard poodles
and be jam up. Then you go to the wiener dog.
They're hard to beat.
The wiener dog, I mean, that son gun and can be gritty.
Oh yeah.
A Dachshund was originally bred to go into a hole to get a badger out.
Yeah. And badgers are no joke.
No, that's a bad dude. So I just,
if there was one breed, myself in particular, that I would not own as a tracking dog, and this is just me, because like you said, not every dog's for everyone. A yak terrier.
Oh,
they just want to kill everything they see.
That's and it's funny you said that, because I guess it goes again. That's a double-edged sword. Do you want a daggum Tasmanian devil that
that's exactly what they are.
When he gets there, he's gonna catch him.
Yep.
But I'm not saying you.
But he wants everything that moves.
Is he gonna catch 15 armadillos, 3 coons, and whatever else he can find by the time he gets there? I mean,
and that can be trained. I mean, don't get me wrong.
Right.
I've trained some good ones. But for me personally, I just don't want to put all that effort into a dog that I can, when I can have something else that I can put much less effort in and have equal or superior
right,
results.
The Jag Terrier, the Patterdale, I mean, are they great dogs? Absolutely. But it gets to a point when you go, how much grit do I really want? Right. I mean, these rascals they're rough.
Yeah.
I mean, cool to watch.
Oh, yeah.
Cool to watch. I mean,
and I shouldn't say I do have fun training them, because they're a challenge.
Right.
And that's what I mean. I like a good challenge when I'm training. I mean,
they can be entertaining just watching them catch everything
right
for a while too, and then
especially when they catch John.
Oh yeah. Anytime you can catch John and make him hard.
Yeah. But that's just my personal preference. That's not a dog for me. I don't care for bloodhounds.
And ironically, that's what you got started with, was a bloodhound.
Yeah,
but there's reasons why.
Right. Bloodhounds are great tracking dogs. Don't get me wrong, but like you said, they don't fit my style.
No.
And they can't keep up stamina wise for our environment.
It's hot. It's hot on a bloodhound here. It's a lot of water you have to carry for them. The breaks, where a cur dog is optimized here for the heat. They're fast. They're gritty when they need to be.
They got the stamina. And honestly, the dachshunds are excellent in our area.
Right.
People think, you got the swamps, the snakes, the gators. If a gator wants to get a dog, guess what? It don't matter what kind of dog it is. It's going to get a dog.
And I guess, they said they're small. I mean, a coon gets around real well.
Yep.
And that little dachshund he just goes just like him. Now, granted, you may get aggravated and want to cuss him when he runs down a tunnel somewhere and you can't get to him, but hey, that's.
Yeah. And, I've seen people trail with pit bulls that do good. Look at these dogos that people are using. I got one now.
No doubt. That's stopping power there.
There's a lot of breeds out there. I mean, it's just more on your life. The biggest thing is your lifestyle.
You remember we used to take my old hound Shorty.
Oh yeah.
If we thought a deer was going to get up and leave, we would take him to turn him loose because he would catch.
Yep, and he was a walker.
And he was a walker.
Yep, and he was a deer dog.
He was a deer dog, and it was funny. It's always. You always say don't turn deer dogs out on. They're not blood dogs or tracking dogs, but he was one of those rare dogs that he knowed when I walked him in there on a leash what we was there for,
right? Versus
deer hunting with him, and it was always odd to me that I could take that dog and deer hunt with him and he would bark just as good as you want a dog, but when we took him to find a deer, he was silent. He knew what he was doing.
Yep. Yeah, he was a good dog.
Yes, sir.
In fact, we took him when we went up there to
Georgia, and we wouldn't turn him loose because it was right down the side of the highway on just the other side of the track. So,
yeah, so I wouldn't say there's any specific breed that I would stay away from, because I mean it's just proven any dog can trail.
That's right.
If you put in the time, the effort. Some are better than others, no doubt. But it's more about your lifestyle, how that dog's going to live, where that dog's going to live,
100%,
and your tracking style.
I feel like if you're somebody that has to live in an urban area, but you want a tracking dog and you don't really want a big dog, man, a Dotson or a Jack Russell is a great choice.
Yeah. They use a lot of Jack Russells in Africa.
Right.
And they can handle the heat. They're resilient. I mean, they're smaller dogs. They got a lot of drive.
And they're greedy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. In fact, I haven't seen him on here tonight, but Wayne Reese lives over there in Louisville. He breeds Jack Russells, and we're fixing to be working with him. I just think I've had a big rush of fishing, and then us working dogs, so I've been wide open here lately. But so there again, I wouldn't say there's a breed to stay away from.
No, I wouldn't either.
Yeah, just personal preference. So, he is on. Yep. Here we go. What carry with you when you back like an backpack? We're minimalist.
Yeah.
When it comes to tracking, it's hot here. It's thick.
It's hot. I wanted to carry a pistol. I wanted to carry my primary light, and I did like to have 2 backup lights. And depending on if it was early season, bow season, or something, I wanted to carry water for my dog, and a drag. To drag a deer back. Now, granted, we wasn't obligated to drag a deer back for anybody, but you're already in there with the hunter, and you might as well help them drag it back. So that's just how we sort of done things. Unless they had a whole team of people there that was waiting, we would help a hunter drag a deer back. But
done it many times.
Pack light, hot here.
Yeah, a backpack for me just is not practical.
No, it wasn't for me.
It's thick. I mean, I don't think people realize when we say thick what thick is.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little different in our area, especially on the thick side of things. And obviously a GPS. We always had our Garmin's on us, so that I guess that goes without saying. But I will say that a Garmin, your primary light, 2 backups, your sidearm, and obviously, I'm the type of person, when I put my breeches or my shorts on, my knife's in my pocket. So, those things there. And I guess outside of my standard gear, it was just water for my dog.
Right. Yeah, and depending on where I'm at, if I know I'm in the swamps, I'm not even carrying that. I go as light as I can go.
Right, yeah. Now, if we was somewhere with a lot of water, there wasn't no sense to haul water when there's water standing everywhere. And in our area, that's something that's very common anyway.
Oh, yeah. Randy Vick said peroxide. He likes to spray peroxide on spots that look like blood.
Hey, that's always a good idea.
Yeah.
There's nothing like, you could just grab a leaf if it's gut shot and just lick it, and then you'd always tell.
Yeah, or grab one of the milk duds and see if
exactly.
I have seen someone do that.
Yeah, right.
Nah,
it's not for me. And
yeah,
really, I didn't lick gut shot leaves neither.
No. And now after COVID, I can't even smell them.
No.
So that's. I said, Joey introduced me to a backpack that's small, but more importantly, it sits low so a fat man doesn't have to bend over extra to keep the pack from catching vines.
That's important when it's comfortable to a fat man.
And I've tried those, but Tommy, come here and track with us sometime. Whew.
Nowadays, I wouldn't be against trying a chest pack, because like turkey hunting now, I don't wear a turkey vest or anything else. I wear a chest pack because I'm mobile and it's not in the way. So I would entertain to try one, but I'm not going to tell you I would fully incorporate it.
So what I did, Brandy, grab my Dan's vest. I bought a Dan's vest this year.
The coon vest, like a coon vest.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You ever seen one?
Uh-huh. Sure have.
So I got that because of all the pockets that it has in the front.
Right.
And it has like a small game pouch in the back.
Right.
Where I could put my lead in or something like that, but it wouldn't be cumbersome. And I got to thinking about that because I do need to carry some stuff, but a backpack just like you know how our
Right.
woods are here. It's just not practical. It's
I think one thing. I mean, and we never carried one because just being younger, but being older now, and thinking about things, I think something's very important to carry. You should always carry a first aid kit.
yeah.
Yeah, because you run and stick a stick in you, stick a stick in your dog, super glue for a bandage. That's always.
So here it is. If you guys can see, she had it my. So there it is. Those are the pockets on the front.
And it's good high vis.
Yeah, it's high vis, and that's one reason why I got it. But it's got a spot here for your Garmin. You can put a water bottle in there. There, it's got zipper pockets, but it's very light.
Right.
And you can still get through some pretty spots with that on.
Right. Yeah, that's I like the way that's designed there.
Yeah, so I'm gonna see. I bought it this year. We'll see how it works out.
Might be one of those things that it looks good on paper, but really it's not practical.
Right. Jason Bell said bug repellent.
Absolutely.
Something that we don't talk about a lot as trackers is ticks. Or I shouldn't say we talk about ticks. We complain about them. But the tick diseases, the Lyme disease, and
I mean
alpha girl syndrome.
So, one particular place I'll tell anybody, if you're ever in Florida and you ever draw a quota for Andrews WMA down in Levy County, or you have to track
that place is terrible.
I went to track a deer in there. I got Buddy that one time when stopped and picked Buddy up. We went down and tracked a deer. Me and got Buddy and had Mac and me and Amanda went, and the hunter told me, he says, you can hear the ticks crawling in here. I thought, okay, we've been around ticks. So when I got back to the truck, my whole body was crawling.
I remember when you called me, cussing me.
hundreds of ticks. I mean, just that, if not thousands. All my legs was crawling. So it was.
That place is the worst that I've ever seen in my life.
So one good thing for ticks is a lint roller. Got a lint roller rolling all over, and stopped and got the lice medicine, the rid. Poured a bathtub full and went and got in the bathtub. I mean, that was the best thing I know to do at the time.
And there, it's like they just have a massive infestation of the sea ticks.
Yeah, I've never seen any place like that.
But, we really need to be more mindful of insect repellent and tick repellent.
Yeah.
I mean, because as trackers and, hunters and woodsmen, that's something that doesn't get discussed enough. And I've got a lot of friends that's gotten Lyme disease and alpha girl syndrome.
Right.
That alpha girl, everyone talks about Lyme, but man, Daryl Holmes.
Yeah.
When you can't eat meat anymore.
That's
well, I shouldn't say meat. He could eat.
He can't eat red meat.
Yeah, can't eat red meat.
So you're limited for the rest of your life to
chicken and fish. I mean, it's Of course, I'm not taking anything away from Lyme disease because that's bad. It's brutal. It's debilitating. So we need to preach that more, and whatever product you want to use, there's a lot of good products out there.
That's right.
From the Sawyers, you can go to Tractor Supply and get the.
There's a plethora of different kinds.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there it is. Permethrin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. So there were some more comments that came through. Let's go up here. Brad Shoemaker said bullet placement versus arrow placement. What's your thoughts?
Both is very, very important, with a rifle, me personally, I'll shoot a deer quarter to me in the point of a shoulder with a rifle, because that's usually going to anchor him right there. I will shoot him through the shoulders. As I won't do that with an arrow. I think.
Yeah, people try to shoot high shoulder with an arrow.
Yeah, and there's a with an arrow. I believe I told you about this. The bow hunting simulator game. It's like $3 on the App Store.
Yep.
And man, it's pretty educational. And I always tell people, look, shoot to your exit point.
Yep.
Look, picture how that's gonna go through there. Obviously, bullet placement. You probably have you got a little more room for error, especially depending on the caliber of bullet you're using a lot.
But then you get people that want a 2.5-inch cut broadhead. That doesn't take the place of shot placement.
No, it doesn't. I mean, me and you've had this conversation because you've always been a fixed bladed man.
Yep, always.
I've always been a mechanical blade. I've always shot a big, meaty mechanical. Just because I always felt like the bigger hole in the right place just left more blood. I could be wrong, could be right, but I mean, it don't.
I think the problem is, you practice
a lot.
You shoot more than anyone I know, whether it's bow, whether it's gun, muzzleloader, rifle, pistol. You shoot.
I shoot. I do.
People are buying these mechanical broadheads with a big cut and not practicing. They're buying because they think it gives them a higher margin of error, and it doesn't.
And that is correct. It doesn't. I think a lot of people gets in their head, there's a deer I'm looking for, there's a deer I'm going to shoot. They don't pay attention to body language. They don't pay attention to angles. A lot of things I see is everybody shooting a bow. They want the deer's head down, the deer relaxed, when in my opinion that's wrong, because if his head's down, when you shoot, he reacts. Well, when he picks his head up, his front end is usually his pivot. So that's where he really has his opportunity to drop the most. Where if his head is up, he can't drop as far as fast. He don't have that pivot point there at, like he would. I try to pay if the deer's oncoming, if his near shoulder is back any little bit, I'm not going to shoot him. I try to wait for that leg to be straight down, or I really prefer that leg pulled all the way forward. That's what I really prefer, but that don't always happen.
Right. Well, a lot of people doesn't pay attention to where that leg is.
And I feel
they always you hear everyone always say, aim for the crease. Well, what happens when that leg's forward? That crease is forward.
That's right.
You're not gonna get that deer.
Yeah, you shot too far forward.
Right.
So, I feel like something that people does a lot is when, if they're 20 foot in a tree and a deer's 10 yards, they still try to shoot where they would if the deer was 30 yards or so, and they're just clipping him down the sides. A lot of times, not even getting into a lung, or they're only clipping one lung, instead of looking at that exit point and driving that arrow from the top side down through the top of the on-side lung and through the bottom of the of the off-side.
Well, that goes back to that app. You and I both have that app, and that app has really opened a lot of eyes to hunters. When I asked them, hey, what angle was the deer at? Where did you aim? And I pull that out, and I'll manipulate it where that deer is facing the way that they said. And then I'll put the shot placement where they said, and then I'll click on it, and it shows the arrow running through, and it'll show exactly what was hit and what wasn't hit. And that has opened a lot of hunters' eyes, and it has saved a lot of time on tracks.
I agree.
Because so many times you think that's perfect, and then when they can see it and say, all right, well, this is what we're looking at. We're probably not going to get this deer.
Right.
Instead of spending 3-4 hours on a track, we spend 45 minutes, 30, 45 minutes, an hour. you know, that $3 or $4 or what, I don't know what it costs now, but
Yeah, the last time I think I looked, it was $3.
yeah, I mean,
Regardless,
that
if it
saved
was
me a lot of time.
if it was $20,
Oh,
it's
it's worth
worth
it.
it just for the. I mean, every year before bow season comes in, as many deer as Amanda's killed or I've killed, with a bow, we're gonna sit down and we're gonna play bow hunting simulator. We're
Yep.
just gonna refresh our minds, and I think that is even back to your rifles and all. You have a lot of people that says, "I know how to shoot my rifle. I know how to shoot my bow. I don't need to practice like that." Well,
Yeah, you do.
I feel like that's very, very false. Um, Take the time, go shoot your gun, spend some time, in an actual hunt. How are you hunting? Just a tidbit. I see a lot of people. They will in the shooting house. They'll rest their barrel on the edge of their shooting house or their tree stand. Well, when you rest your barrel on the edge of that shooting house or something, you've thrown your barrel harmonics off.
Right.
So that bullet is not going where you think it's going. It may be 5 or 6 inches off, and you're trying to figure out how did I hit him there. Well, where did you have your barrel rested? So always be cognizant of that you don't want nothing touching your barrel.
Right.
A lot of the guns I shoot, and one of the biggest things for the guys that has ARs, some of you have run into this, some of you haven't, and some of you may be chasing this. You'll chase accuracy. It's like, man, my gun was shooting really good. Now it's shooting, a 5-inch group with the same bullets. What's happened? And you've done chased the scope mounts. You've done chased everything on your gun. And in all reality, it's nothing but your gas block. Your handguard's tweaked a little bit. Well, when you shoot your barrel and it whips, that gas block is bumping that handguard.
Yep.
And you don't have that clearance. And some people say, does that really make that kind of difference? Well, yeah, it does.
Yeah. So, talked about bullet placement, arrow placement. Something I want to talk to you about, or them about, because you helped me a lot with this. Muzzleloaders.
Man, it's a love-hate relationship with a muzzleloader.
There's 2 rounds, I'd say 3 rounds, that outperform the rest, and there's one that always stands out.
The one that always worked for me, and I was the old Hornady XTP mag,
Yep.
the cheapest you could find. Me and you'd had them conversations years ago about it. It's like, man, every deer I shoot with a muzzleloader, if he runs off, there's no blood. Some people loves the power belt bullet.
I love them too. My dogs love them.
Your dogs love them.
Right.
I've seen so many people shoot those, and will it kill a deer? Yeah, but man, if he runs off,
you better have a dog.
You better have a dog, because he's not going to bleed.
There was another one you turned me on to, because there for a little while we couldn't get those Hornadies.
It was the Barnes expanders.
Yep, the Barnes expanders.
All copper bullet. They held together.
Yeah.
But the old Hornady XTPs, did they shoot very flat? No, they didn't. But 99% of the time, you got a pass through and you had a blood trail. And one thing, some people I used to hunt with when I was younger, I was shooting them deer behind the shoulder with a muzzleloader, and we was always having to hunt them, and these guys they was just deadly. They was killing deer all the time and never having no issues. And they told me, they said, hey, if you'll buy them old XTPs, and shoot that son going square through the middle of the shoulders, so if you break both shoulders and break that front end, he may push around, but he won't go nowhere. And that was, for me, that was always big with a muzzleloader, because it never failed when I shot. It was one of those foggy mornings, and the fog just, I didn't have a clue where the deer went.
Right.
But shooting him through the middle of the shoulder with that muzzleloader always worked out for me.
So we had a lot of comments coming while we were on this topic. So Michael Polio says a great pack I highly recommend is the Marsupial Upland Vest.
Heard good things on those.
Bow season South Florida, 6 to 8 bottles of water, a couple of Gatorade, and had tracks where that wasn't enough. I carry a water bag with vet wrap, baggies for organs, and a knife. My caddy carries a backpack with the other essentials, extra lights, collars, tick spray, etc.
Again, I mean that's all good information
Yep.
and pertains to the terrain and the conditions you're tracking in.
Yep. So Ralph Bennett says Repel Blue Can best he's ever used, and if Ralph goes home with one tick, he's in trouble. He won't be able to track anymore. So that must work.
The Repel Blue Can.
Yep. And
Ralph spends a lot of time tracking. He's the owner of the famous camo.
Oh yeah. So let's keep going. Crossbows. I'm a fan of crossbows.
I love crossbows. I mean, I personally hunt with a crossbow.
I have to now. I mean, I would love to get back into shooting a compound. But my shoulder.
Right.
Now, there's a place in Valdosta Life Outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy, the owner there,
right.
He went fishing with me a couple of weeks ago, and he told me, he said, man, the last time you were in my shop was like, probably 7-8 years ago. I said, yeah, probably a little more than that. He said the bow technology has changed dramatically. He said you don't need a 70-pound bow anymore. He said, honestly, if you can shoot a 45-pound bow, you're going to kill anything you want to kill. But then he told me, he says, another thing that bow prices. I got a almost $3,000 crossbow sitting in there that I've shot 2 deer with.
I mean, I hunt with a crossbow. I mean, me and Amanda does. We hunt on the ground primarily. I've got a tree stand. I haven't killed a deer out of a tree stand in years. I mean, and not even so much as a ground blind. I think outside the box of deer hunt stuff. I hunt out of a little turkey chair most of the time, just because some of the places I hunt. Now, I do feel like I am, with my crossbow, I'm a lot more precise.
Right.
But
it gets more people in the woods.
It does. It gets more people in the woods. The elderly people, kids. And so I can understand where some people the double-edged sword with a crossbow is you get people that is uneducated on them, thinks I got a crossbow, I can shoot any shot I want.
These new crossbows like mine that advertises shoot 100 yards. Well, I can shoot a group like that at 100 yards. I can shoot a group like that at 60 yards.
But you sure can't dictate what that deer's going to do.
Exactly.
I'm
not going to shoot it more than 30 yards.
I have shot a deer one time. I shot a deer 54 yards with a crossbow. Luckily, the deer didn't move, and that's been a long time ago. Now I try to shoot everything 40 yards and in. But I just feel like I can be a lot more precise, and the amount of practicing I do. But also anything, you can never dictate what a deer is going to do. And if you hunt long enough, you're eventually going to make a bad shot. I don't
care who you are. Like you said, you can't predict what that deer is going to do. I don't care. I don't care if you're the best sniper in the world. You can't predict what that. I mean, like that blink of an eye, a deer can twitch its head, and people try to head shoot. And
that's right. And
we're not talking. A big target. Everyone thinks, a deer's a big target. No, it's really not.
No. I'm big. For me, I'm big on that. I like that top of the heart, low, bottom of the lung.
That's where you hit them.
Just because that, if you can get that top of the heart, bottom of the lungs, and again, I shoot those big cut 2.5 inch, broadheads. When you put one of those big broadheads and in that area, you don't have far to track.
Right.
Most of the time, you can see him fall.
So we go 2 comments here. I'll just kind of put them together. Chuck Darby says biggest thing with mechanicals is people shooting the shoulder, and then Michael says when talking about archery, it doesn't matter what you shoot or how you shoot it. We are talking about a game of millimeters. I equate it to stab victims in an ER. They live and die many times by mere millimeters. Nature has to say.
I mean,
the other side of that is how many people shoot dull broadheads.
I mean, that to me is a big thing. And if you remember years ago, me and you had the conversation on hemorrhaging. A deer dies by hemorrhaging and blood loss. And the best analogy, I mean, the best one I can still give to this day is if you take a dull pocket knife and cut yourself, you can hold your hand on it and it'll quit bleeding. But if you cut yourself while you're shaving your face with a razor, you think you're going to bleed to death.
Yep.
Because of the sharpness of the blade. And that is, even down to the comment on the millimeters and all. You're right. It's, I guess Fred Bear said it best. You aim small, you miss small.
Yeah.
I try to be extremely precise, but one of my ways of thinking with the big broadhead I shoot, and again, shoot mechanicals. There was a comment there of a lot of people tries to shoot the shoulder, and you're right. That's a mistake. If you was shooting something like a Montec or something of that nature, you got a lot more forgiving if you hit the shoulder.
Right.
But if I'm shooting that big, meaty mechanical, I've got that little bit more leeway. And usually
But you don't want to take shots because you have leeway.
No, absolutely
Just
not.
like someone with a 300 Win mag or a 338 or a 7 mag, you still don't want to take questionable shots.
No, absolutely not.
Guess what? You're not going to get that deer. I don't care what.
I mean, how many deer we tried? Somebody said I shot him with a 300 Win mag.
A pile of them.
And they've shot him, right over the spine.
Yep.
I've seen it done. You've seen it done, but
now I still have it in the safe in there, but I bought a 22-250 from you years ago. Remember that?
Years ago.
And so I took it out, and I was hunting in Madison on the farm there, and we had some coyotes. And I said, you know what? I set Brandy up in the stand. I said, I'm going to watch this field because we kept getting this big female on camera. Well, it was really cold that morning. Brandy texted me, said, hey, come get me. Let's go to breakfast. I said, okay. Turned the corner. Here come a doe running right across the path in front of me. And she didn't run for me. She was looking back, and she was moving. I said, dang, there's got to be a buck chasing her. And there was a big old 8-point. And all I had was that 22-250. And, I propped up, and he stopped. And I shot. And I look up, and I was like, dang, where'd he go? I thought I missed. I said, deer didn't run off. And I get up there, and I shot him, perfect, about 4 inches behind the shoulder, and he just fell in his tracks right there.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hit spine. I didn't, and it was a little old 22-250 with VMAX bullet.
So, and to explain that is when you're shooting something running at those velocities, you get something, when you reach hypervelocity of some things, some of the deer you've got from me on depredations that I've shot with my Valkyrie, shoot him right behind the shoulder and he falls right there. But when you go to skin him and you look in the blood vessels in his hams is
devastated.
It liquefies them. So that all of that energy and the speed of that bullet, when it hits, it just explodes right there and delivers everything at one time.
And that sure ain't no 2.5-inch cut.
No, and it just liquefies them. Do they bleed? Nope, won't be hardly a drop. But when you pull the hide off of them, sometimes you better watch out because it's like hitting a water balloon. I
That's right.
I can't tell you how many deer I've skint shot with them little blistering fast rifles that has when you snatch the skin off, that I've been painted with blood.
That's
just
right.
Because.
So I'm going to skip over a few comments and then we're going to go back to them. Okies East Kansas Deer Recovery. Do you plan to add a tracker search engine to your webpage like UBT, or do you consider it unnecessary with the current apps available? The plan is we will have that. We got some other things we've been working on, but that is our goal. However, as just like anything else, the tracking world's evolving. Tracking's really changed with social media, all these state groups. Probably the best resource is your local state groups. Every state has a state tracking group now, but I think even more so when we start looking at the younger generations of hunters, apps is where it's at.
Yes.
It may not be there now because most of them are new. I mean, you can see behind me, we're advertising an app right now. And the reason why we're advertising this app is, they do a great job to vet the trackers that is on their list. I got a text from Shane Simpson today asking about 2 trackers and their certifications and if I recommended them. And that says a lot about that platform, because not to knock any certain list or any certain groups or organizations, but I'm not a fan of just paying $25 and you get your name on the list.
No.
Anyone and their brother with a house dog bring their Yorkie out there that's never been trained, never tracked a deer, but they paid $25, their name goes on that tracker list. They might get a call and then cost someone their deer. I'm not a fan of that.
And so, be the deer of a lifetime.
Right. So I just want to put that out there.
It's never a bad idea. You're never wrong with waiting for the right team.
That's right.
To waiting for somebody that has credentials.
So we're going to, when we do this, there's going to be some criteria that has to be met to be on our list. So it is coming. So let's go back up real quick and touch on a few things. Megan Schmidt says 1 out of 10 muzzleloader track recoveries in 2 seasons. Worst tracks ever. Wow. I think I'm probably the opposite. I look forward to muzzleloader season because we get more easy tracks.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say just because of a lot of times the lack of blood that a muzzleloader leaves, but I mean, will be a great shot,
Yeah.
But again, you have the smoke.
Yeah.
So the hunter don't know where the deer went. There's no blood, and in today's world, people has got where they rely so much on the tracking teams, and the bittersweet side of that is some people they've lost the ability to know how to track game and a lot of woodsmanship there. But on the good side of that is people is now learning to listen that if you're not sure and your hit's questionable, just back out and wait. Call a tracking team. You walk in there with the dog and 5 minutes, 25 or 30 yards, a deer's laying over there. You got them.
And believe me, I love those phone calls.
Hey, they're great.
Because I don't get many of them.
Right.
Muzzleloader seasons, when I do. Again, we're in kind of a different area here. We have a lot of avid outdoorsmen in our area.
That is correct.
And probably, and I don't want to say this, Megan, but I have to say it. And I'm curious as to details of the 1 out of 10. But I wonder if it's people are too lazy to shoot their muzzleloaders inside.
Oh man, that's.
And I'm going to be honest, and Dustin will back this up. I stay so busy, I just don't have the time.
No, you bring them to me.
So I bring them to you.
Yeah.
And you won't take any money from me, but it works out in the end.
It works out. You know,
but
I got to pay rent on some duck decoys sometimes.
There you go.
You know, one thing I see hunters do is they have a big misconception of bore sighting. Had a guy, I mean, just very recently, he was talking about he never killed a deer or never killed a buck, and he'd missed several. I'm like, man, how did you know, what are you doing to miss these deer? Did you sight your rifle in? And he said, well, it come bore sighted. And he had never verified his gun, and that is wrong in so many ways.
Yep.
You know, and you see a lot of hunters. I sighted my gun, you know, my 30-06 in with a 150 grain core lock, but they're shooting, you know, a 180 grain power point, or they're shooting a 150 SST, or they just whatever says 30-06 are sticking in their gun.
Well, the other side of that. And you know this because you shot this rifle that I have. You mounted the scope. My 308, my Weatherby 308.
Mm-hmm.
The twist rate in that barrel will only allow me to shoot 150 grain bullets out of that.
That's just what that gun likes.
And if I try to shoot a 168, it's all over the place. Mm-hmm. Well, Weatherby, they like to play games. And that twist rate in that barrel is for a 150 grain bullet. You shoot anything else.
You know, that twist rate is, you know, we can go down this rabbit hole and get so far down it.
I know.
You know, that twist rate versus that barrel length, you know, that twist rate may stabilize a 168, but it needs to be 2 more inches longer to get that one more revolution, or
But the thing is, don't think that because you read in a magazine that 168 grain is optimal for a 30 caliber bullet, that's correct. Because if I shoot a 168 grain bullet out of that 308, I'm going to have about a 10-inch group.
Well, you know, this group right here, this is a 5-shot group that I shot earlier with a Ruger SFAR 308 with 150 grain, 1776 ammo. I was proofing the gun out for a friend of mine, and I know another guy. He says, "Hey man, his gun shoots 168 is great." Now, has he tried our ammo? I'm not sure, but he told me that gun shot it shot 168, so it was good to know. But that particular gun, obviously, it likes those 150s pretty well. And that's just a standard 150 grain Sierra Game King.
Right. I had to flip the camera around because someone said that they couldn't read the banner behind us because it looked mirrored. So I had to I had to flip it around for them. But yeah, that's something to consider, you know, because
shoot your gun.
Right.
And when you get your gun where you think it's sighted in, shoot at least a 3-shot group to see what it's going to do.
The other thing, and you and I have talked about this for years, people go out there, they'll shoot their gun, pattern it, and then they'll clean it.
Mm-hmm.
But they just sighted in with a dirty gun.
Right. So,
especially muzzle, this really comes into play with muzzle loaders.
Exactly. You know, I do. So most people, when they clean a gun, they don't clean it. They don't clean everything out of the barrel. And
I just don't clean it.
Right. you know, for your standard, most of your deer hunt guns, you leave it like it is. But after you run that brush through there, or you run a bore snake through there, shoot your gun 2 or 3 more times to make sure that it is still hitting where you want, because that barrel now has to acclimate back to the copper fouling in the barrel. So when you've stripped something out of that barrel, or you've removed something, you've changed the harmonics of that barrel.
Yeah. Yeah, and muzzle loaders is, you see it the most because it's a pain to shoot a muzzleloader, sighted in, clean it, you know. But you and I, we've always done it. 3 shots, clean it.
Right.
3 shots, clean it. You know, And another thing is like these boar butters and all that, people put too much.
You can put too much, right? I mean, if I always like to put a little boar butter on my bullet, but I made sure I'd done the same thing every time, because if I didn't put boar butter on my bullet, well, then you change the pressures. There's a lot that changes there.
Yep.
You change the tension of that coming out, and
That's right.
said I can get down that rabbit hole to where
Oh yeah. So we'll get through these pretty quick. Another one from Michael Polito. What are some tried and true ways to keep our dogs well fed and hydrated, canned, dry, or other recommendations? We went over dog nutrition quite a bit last week. I only feed dry. What's super important is the proper protein, proper fat, good quality food. You don't have enough protein and fat, your dog's not going to perform. I feed 30-20. I've pretty much always fed 30-20.
Right.
My vet, he says, as long as it's 24 and above in protein, he likes a 30-20. But he really wants a 20 fat.
Right.
But you want that high protein for a working dog. And as far as hydration, just like with people, if we're trying to hydrate ourselves in the woods, we're behind the 8 ball. We should have been hydrating before we even.
That's correct.
So make sure your dogs stay hydrated at home before you even go out into the field.
And I do feel like as a dog handler, you have to be able to read your dog, to know your dog. That when sometimes you got to say, "Hey, I've got to stop watering my dog."
Mm-hmm.
So
you got to stay ahead of it, not behind it. Don't chase it.
If you remember, one thing we used to always get aggravated with Mac. That son's going, if he found him a water hole somewhere, he was putting the brakes on. He was going to get him some water.
Yeah, or lay down in it and
cool off. And when he got cooled off,
you were not going to make him go.
No, he'd get up and go again. But again, he was extremely smart. He knew his limitations.
But that's the big thing, and I know you've always, you fed quality food. You like Purina.
Purina was good to me.
I feed Diamond now. Diamond's been fantastic. And like for me, I've got a wide variety of breeds and dogs.
Oh, Lord, yeah.
That Diamond Performance 30-20 it's fit the bill for all of them.
Right.
We were feeding 2 different types of feed because some dogs didn't like this, some dogs didn't like that, some dogs didn't do good on this, some on that. And we found one that fits all of them, and that's what we stick with. But the main thing is the 30-20 or higher protein, higher fat, because, when you this because you ran deer dogs, once you run a dog down, it takes a little bit back.
I mean,
and deer dogs are a whole different animal. You're running miles and miles, day after day.
He can get run down if I wanted to feed him a good quality feed. I used to like to give him good supplements, to try to help him recuperate. I used to like Percotone. The downfall to Percotone, when I used to use it was it almost worked too good, because you could take a dog that was run down real bad and give him a shot of Percotone in the morning, and by the time I got to the woods, he got like nothing was wrong with him, so it was sort of bittersweet at times, but
red cell's a big one.
Red cell's a big one also.
And it's a good supplement.
Right.
But again, the goal is to build up that storage with the protein and fat and carbohydrates. And that's something else people doesn't look at, is the carbohydrates in the food.
So one thing I used to like to do, if you got a dog that was in a bad way, and is you could feed him a honey bun.
Mm-hmm.
Just a lot like people. A man gets down, he gets
hyperglycemia.
Hot, you can get him a honey bun, and it'll bring him back from a bad place. And a honey bun with the sugars and the carbohydrates would bring a dog back.
Yeah, one thing I keep on me is little packs of honey.
Right.
You go to McDonald's or Hardee's and get a little pack of honey, and Sam was bad about it. Sam would just he'd run till he was
Right.
ready to just.
He'd run. He fell over.
Yeah, and he'd be over there shaking like seizures and stuff, and you squirt a little bit of honey in his mouth and his back, like
Right.
You know, he was a dog that I really had to watch.
Yeah, he didn't. I remember he didn't really. He didn't have no sense when it comes to taking care of himself. He was all drive.
Oh yeah, I kick myself every day for getting rid of that dog, but he's where he needs to be. I mean, he's in Mexico tracking big mule deer, and I mean, he gets a lot of work.
Right. And that's what he was one of them that he had to have a job all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. When it came to off season, you didn't want to live with him. I mean,
right.
Sucker just wanted to hunt. But he's also one that, now he was muscled up. He was ripped and lean, but he was one we struggled to keep weight on.
Right.
And, I remember going up to Dr. Sapp and saying, man, what do I need to do with this dog? People are going to think I'm starving. And he said, he laughed at me and Brandy when we were in there. He said, when's the last time you seen a fat marathon runner?
I mean,
you got a good point.
You think back to that shorty dog we mentioned earlier. You couldn't keep weight on them. Well, I mean, and you could feed them and feed them and feed them. And during the week, I was at work, wasn't hunting or something. He would get a little weight back on, but soon as if I had a couple of days off work, he would be right back run down, and he would look bad, but he was just in shape. I mean, it wasn't because he didn't eat.
Right. Yeah, and that's what Sapp told us. I mean, and plus, I mean, you could see, you could dang near count every rib on Sam, and that there was nothing we could do. I mean, and we had people make comments. I'm like, look, you can go talk to my vet. We've had him up there. We're trying to, I don't know what else to do. He's still that way.
He's an athlete.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's just. I ask hunters before we go out: orthopedic and or heart conditions, diabetes, epilepsy. I carry sweets in my backpack. It's not a bad idea. I've had hunters fall out on me. I've had other trackers, that had some pretty serious health issues go on during tracks. I mean, so not this past season. The season, was it this past?
Season before.
Season before, when I had my surgery.
Yeah.
It's been about a year and a half. Yeah. The season before, I was stupid and I went out tracking 2 weeks after I had a major operation. And I got a mile into the woods, no, a mile and a half, and I literally laid down and could not move.
Mm-hmm.
And the hunter didn't have good cell service. He finally had to walk off. I physically could not move. I laid there for 2 hours. I think it was an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that. It was an hour and a half. And he walked to get enough cell service to call someone, and never could. Well, he heard someone running saws and a hammer, and they were fixing up a shooting house. So he went over there, and they were able to make a phone call. I had to lay there an hour and a half before I could walk 100 yards to get to the buggy because I was hard-headed. After a major operation, I was going tracking.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
And then what do? I don't go home. I go on another track that Jason Byer met me at. I called Jason and said, man, I can't do it, but I'm going to meet you there. And I said I was going to stay in the truck. And next thing I know, I'm out there and I'm fixing to follow behind Jason, and the whole world starts spinning on me. And it was my stupidity, but they could have had to dealt with a very serious situation.
Yeah, because you was being stubborn.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good point to discuss health conditions. And, I know that's a touchy subject, but it's not a bad thing to talk about. Well, I'm going to look real quick, see if I missed any comments, and start wrapping things up. So if you have any last-minute questions or comments, get them in now. And if I missed any, I apologize. It was not intentional. Let's see. Went over a lot of stuff. So Dustin, you said earlier you're with Rick's
Thermal Optics.
Rick's Thermal Optics, and so do you want to share how people can get a hold of you, what you offer,
So
and also with your livestock?
So you can follow me at Dustin Williams on my Facebook page. My company page is North Florida Livestock and Crop Protection. If you have any thermal questions or questions, about getting into thermal or certain units, what will work best for you, feel free to reach out to me on my page, and I'll point you in all the right directions. Get you set up with qualified dealers that's reputable and that's going to do you right. And if you got any questions, about ammo or guns or calibers, always feel free. Anybody can reach out to me. I'll do the best to set you up. If you're looking for ammo, good quality, 1776 ammo, man, is good stuff. It's the only ammo company you'll ever find. If you buy any of our ammo and you're not satisfied with it, we will refund your money. No questions asked. You can use code Williams22 and get a little discount to help you out more with some shipping than anything. And thanks, we'll say thanks for everybody for tuning in and listening to us ramble back and forth. And
and we had a steady flow of people coming on, hopping off, on, off. Had some good conversations and some stuff outside the norm that we talk about.
Right.
Like I said, we wanted to educate the trackers to be able to educate the hunters.
That's right. And it's, as long as everybody's trying to always help everybody to be better, to better themselves and better themselves, and we're moving forward instead of the fighting my way is the best way or this way is not the good way. Man, that needs to go somewhere else, because we already got enough people trying to take what we love from us, and now we're always fighting about calibers and broadheads. Now we're fighting about how we're going to recover the animal we've already shot.
That's right.
And so what if we got to have a drone and a dog and we work together? Just it's about it's said a bunch. If we could just work together, what could we really accomplish?
Well, that's like a still hunter that hates a dog hunter, but they call a tracker in with a dog to find their deer. I mean,
how many times
we all work together?
How many times does a dog get somewhere and make that buck that's always nocturnal get up moving, and a still hunter get to shoot him?
That's right.
So
and I've tracked a lot of deer for dog hunters.
Absolutely.
So especially where we live. We have one more question come in. It says, which of you two have better hair?
Well,
neither one of us have much hair.
I ain't got no hair. I'm bald.
I got a little bit, not much, but
Kenny got way more hair than I do.
Yeah, but I'm not far behind him.
I got a little bit on the sides, but true story.
Mine's receding here, and I'm getting it, about going here, so I'm not far behind you.
So true story. Today I graduated high school. I shaved my head, and it never come back. I mean, I knew that I was going to go bald. My mom's side of the family was bald, and my dad's. So when I shaved it, the very little ever came back. I mean, it was. So I've pretty much been bald for 25 years now.
Well, Dustin, I appreciate you coming
Absolutely,
on. Man. A lot of people especially a lot of these people may not know the tracker that you've been over the years, and
right.
I've tracked with a lot of people, and I call you all the time to this day.
Still to this day, we talk about different things, dog behavior. It's I'll help anybody any way I can. And anybody watching, if they have any questions, I'll do it for sure. Do what I can to help anybody. Anything in the outdoor industry, and if I can't give them a direct answer, I'll do what I can to help them find it.
That's right.
So.
And just one last little thing, talking about the 6.5 Creedmoor, and Dustin, he'll see me get on there, a Rage Broadhead 6.5 Creedmoor, and I'll get on these Facebook chats and I'll get people going. And Dustin, he'll send me a little laughing emoji, or he'll say, Dustin knows what I'm doing. all I'm doing is having a little bit of fun, getting a little rile out of people.
Kenny likes to stir the pot.
No, I don't stir the pot at all.
He's got a big paddle. So Kenny likes to, when he does that, I'll just send him some pictures, of a bunch of dead deer sometimes. And
then you'll send me stuff like, especially like, one guy said the 6.5 was traveling so fast it was cauterizing the hole.
Yeah, just to touch on that, a 6.5, for anybody that thinks it's fast, it's slow. What makes a 6.5 a long range gun is the high BCs of the bullet. Right. That is it. I hear all the time a 7mm 08 is far superior. So
I like a 7mm.
7mm 08 is a great cartridge, but to say it's far superior over a 6.5, it's a 0.5 millimeter bigger. They shoot the same grain bullet.
Yeah.
And they're roughly the same speed.
Yep.
So
yeah,
that's and
Hornady's got a great marketing team.
Hornady has an excellent marketing team.
All right, well, we appreciate it, and we appreciate you guys from tuning in. And
absolutely,
we will see y'all next week.
Yep. Thanks for having me, Kenny.
No problem, man. Thank you.
Yes, sir.